The auction block felt cold beneath Katherine Johnson's worn boots, though the afternoon sun blazed overhead in Cannon City, Colorado territory, and she knew the chill came from somewhere deeper than the weather could touch. A crowd of maybe 50 people gathered in the dusty town square, most of them men with weathered faces and calculating eyes, all waiting to bid on a woman whose only crime was burning every meal she had ever attempted to cook. Her aunt stood off to the side, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line of disappointment that Katherine had seen more times than she could count in the 3 years since her parents died of typhoid fever back in St. Louis. "This here is Katherine Johnson," the auctioneer called out, his voice carrying across the square with practiced ease. 20 years old, healthy, can read and write, knows her letters and numbers. Good breeding stock if you need a wife. Strong enough for farm work, too. Katherine felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. It was August of 1878, and she never imagined her life would come to this. Her aunt had taken her in after her parents died, brought her west with promises of a fresh start. But those promises had soured quickly when it became clear that Katherine possessed not a single domestic skill that her aunt valued. She could read 3 languages, do complex mathematics in her head, and argue philosophy with the best of them. But she could not prepare a meal that would not send diners running for water or the outhouse. "She cannot cook worth a damn," her aunt called out from the side, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "But she is strong and young, and someone might make use of her." A few men stepped forward to examine her more closely, and Katherine held her head high despite the tears threatening to spill. One man with tobacco-stained teeth reached out to touch her arm, and she jerked away instinctively. "Feisty too," someone commented, and more laughter followed. The bidding started low, insultingly low, and Katherine watched as her worth was measured in dollars that would not even buy a decent horse. $30, $40, $50. The numbers climbed slowly, and she wondered which of these rough men would own her by day's end, what kind of life awaited her in whatever cabin or farm they dragged her to. Then a voice cut through the proceedings, clear and firm. $100. The crowd turned, and Katherine followed their gazes to see a man stepping forward from the back of the gathering. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with sandy brown hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of good whiskey. He wore dusty trail clothes and a hat that had seen better days, but he carried himself with a confidence that made people step aside as he approached. "Well now, Owen Fletcher," the auctioneer said with obvious surprise. "Did not expect to see you at a bride auction." "I am not looking for a bride," Owen said, his voice steady as he came to stand near the auction block. He looked up at Katherine, really looked at her, and something in his gaze was different from the other men. There was no calculation there, no assessment of her body or her potential usefulness. Just honest curiosity. "I am looking for a partner." "Partner," Katherine's aunt scoffed. "She cannot even boil water without burning it. What kind of partner is that?" "Maybe the kind who can do other things," Owen replied, not taking his eyes off Katherine. "Can you ride?" Katherine blinked at the unexpected question. Yes, I learned as a girl." "Can you shoot?" "My father taught me. I am a fair shot with a rifle." "Can you read a map, keep accounts?" "Yes to both." Owen nodded slowly, then turned to the auctioneer. $100 stands. "Anyone want to go higher?" Silence fell over the crowd. $100 was more than most of these men made in 3 months. No one raised the bid. "Sold to Owen Fletcher," the auctioneer called out, bringing his gavel down with a sharp crack. Katherine's aunt hurried forward to collect the money while Katherine climbed down from the auction block on shaking legs. Owen waited for her, not offering his hand, not presuming to touch her, just standing there with a patience that seemed at odds with the situation. "Get your things," he said quietly. "Whatever you brought with you." "This is all I have," Catherine replied, gesturing to the simple dress she wore and the small bundle of possessions at the base of the auction block. Her aunt had not allowed her to bring much when she declared Catherine would be sold off to recoup the cost of feeding her for 3 years. Owen's jaw tightened slightly, but he only nodded. He picked up her bundle and turned toward the edge of the square where 2 horses were tethered. One was a sturdy roan gelding, the other a smaller bay mare. "You will ride Star," he said, indicating the mare. "She has a gentle mouth and an easy gait. We have about 4 hours of daylight left, and I want to get home before dark." "Where is home?" Catherine asked, her voice sounding small even to her own ears. "I have a ranch about 15 miles north of here. Small operation, just me and a couple of hired hands when I can afford them. Cattle mostly, some horses." He handed her the reins to the mare, then swung up onto his own horse with practiced ease. "I know what you are thinking. You are wondering what I want from you, what I expect." Catherine mounted the mare, grateful that her aunt had at least allowed her to ride occasionally during their time in Colorado. "The thought had crossed my mind." "I expect partnership," Owen said simply. "I need help running the ranch. Someone who can keep the books, handle correspondence with buyers, help manage the stock. I need someone with a brain, not just a pair of hands to cook and clean. Though I will not lie, it would be nice to have meals that do not taste like charcoal." Despite everything, Catherine felt a small smile tug at her lips. "I truly am a terrible cook. Then I will teach you, or we will figure it out together. I am no chef, but I can manage basic meals without poisoning anyone." He started riding north and Catherine followed, her mind whirling with questions and possibilities. "I saw you up there on that block, and I saw something those other men did not. You have fire in you, intelligence. Those are worth more than cooking skills." They rode in silence for a while, leaving Cannon City behind as they headed into the rolling hills beyond. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh way, all scrub grass and distant mountains, the sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Catherine had spent the last 3 years mostly confined to her aunt's boarding house, cooking disasters aside, helping with laundry and cleaning but rarely allowed out into the world. The freedom of the open space made her feel like she could breathe for the first time in months. "Why did you really buy me?" she asked finally. "You could have hired a bookkeeper, someone with actual experience." Owen was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the trail ahead. "Maybe I did it because I know what it feels like to be undervalued. To have people look at you and only see what you cannot do, not what you can." He glanced at her sideways. "And maybe because you looked like you were about to spit fire at the next person who tried to touch you, and I admired that." "I was close," Catherine admitted. "Very close." "Good. That spirit will serve you well out here. The ranch life is not easy, especially not for women. But if you are willing to work and learn, I think we can make a real partnership of this." "What exactly does that mean? Partnership?" "It means you are not my servant, you are not my slave. We work together, share the responsibilities, build something worth having." Owen's voice took on an intensity that made Catherine look at him more closely. "I have been running this place alone for 2 years since my brother headed to California. It is too much for one person. I need someone I can trust, someone who can pull their weight. In return, you will have a home, food, safety, and respect. You will have a say in how things are run." "And if it does not work out?" Catherine asked, needing to understand the full scope of what she was agreeing to. "Then you are free to leave. I will not hold you against your will. Though I will admit, I hope you will stay long enough to give it a fair chance." They rode on as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. Owen pointed out landmarks as they went, explaining the layout of the land and which ranches neighbored his. He spoke with obvious love for this place, and Catherine found herself listening intently, learning the names of distant peaks and the locations of water sources. "Do you have other workers on the ranch?" she asked. "Two hands, Miguel and his son Thomas. They have a cabin on the east section of the property. Good men, hard workers. They will treat you with respect or answer to me. You sound very certain of that." "I am. I do not tolerate men who think women are lesser. Had enough of that growing up with a father who treated my mother like property." Owen's voice hardened. "That is not how things work on my land." As they crested a hill, Catherine saw the ranch spread out below them in a valley carved by a narrow creek. The main house was modest but well built, made of logs with a stone chimney. A barn stood nearby, along with several corrals and outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, their forms dark against the golden grass. "Welcome to the Fletcher Ranch," Owen said, and there was pride in his voice that Catherine could not help but respond to. They rode down the hill as the sun painted everything in shades of amber and rose. As they approached the barn, two men emerged from the shadows. One was older, perhaps 50, with silver threading through his dark hair. The other was younger, early 20s maybe, with his father's strong build and an open, friendly face. "Miguel Thomas," Owen greeted them as he dismounted. "This is Catherine Johnson. She will be helping run the ranch from now on." Miguel's eyebrows rose slightly, but he tipped his hat respectfully. "Welcome, Señorita Johnson. Call me Catherine, please," she said, dismounting more carefully than Owen had. Her legs were already protesting the long ride. "Catherine will be handling the books and correspondence," Owen explained. "She will also be learning the ranch operations, so I expect you both to help teach her what she needs to know." "Of course," Thomas said with an easy smile. "Always happy to have another set of hands around here." Owen showed the men where to take the horses, then turned to Catherine. "Come on, I will show you the house." The interior of the cabin was sparse but clean. A main room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A rough-hewn table and chairs sat near the kitchen area, and a few comfortable-looking chairs were arranged near the hearth. Two doors led off to what Catherine assumed were bedrooms. "You will take my room," Owen said, gesturing to the larger of the two doors. "I will bunk in my brother's old room. It is smaller, but I do not need much space." "I cannot take your room," Catherine protested. "You can and you will. You are a lady and you deserve privacy and comfort." Owen's tone left no room for argument. "The bed is decent, and there is a trunk for your clothes. Not that you seem to have many," he added, setting down her small bundle. "My aunt was not generous when she decided to auction me off. Then we will get you what you need. Next time we go to town, we will visit the general store." Owen walked to the kitchen area and began pulling out supplies. "For now, though, we should eat." "Are you hungry?" Catherine's stomach answered for her with an embarrassingly loud rumble. She had not eaten since early morning, and the auction and ride had left her famished. "Very." "All right then. Watch and learn. Cooking is not as complicated as people make it out to be. It is just following instructions and paying attention." Owen moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, building up the fire in the stove, setting a pot of water to boil, slicing salt pork into a pan. He explained what he was doing as he worked, his voice patient and clear. Catherine watched, trying to memorize the steps, the way he tested the heat of the pan, the amount of salt he added to the water. "The key is not to walk away," he said. "That is where most people go wrong. You start something cooking, then you get distracted, and before you know it, Everything is burned or boiled over. Stay present, pay attention, and adjust as needed. Within 30 minutes, he had prepared a simple but appetizing meal of salt pork, boiled potatoes, and beans. It was far from fancy, but it smelled wonderful, and Catherine's mouth watered as he dished it out onto 2 tin plates. They sat at the table together, and for a moment, the reality of the situation hit Catherine fully. This morning, she had woken up in her aunt's boarding house, dreading what the day would bring. Now she was sitting in a ranch house with a stranger who had bought her at auction, eating dinner as if this were somehow normal. "This must be very strange for you," Owen said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "It is," Catherine admitted, "but strange does not necessarily mean bad. I think I am still trying to understand what happened today. You were given a raw deal by someone who should have cared for you. I offered you a way out. Whether it becomes something good or not, well, that is up to both of us." Owen took a bite of beans, chewed thoughtfully. "I will be honest with you, Catherine. I did not plan to go to that auction today. I was in town to sell some cattle, heard about it, and something made me curious. When I saw you up there, saw the way you held yourself despite the humiliation, I thought maybe here is someone worth knowing. Someone who could be a real partner, not just another mouth to feed or body to warm a bed." Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks at that last comment, but Owen seemed unbothered, just matter of fact. "I want to be clear about expectations," he continued. "This house has 2 bedrooms, and that is how it will stay unless and until you decide otherwise. I will not presume anything. You are free to come and go as you please, though I hope you will choose to stay and work with me. If something more develops between us over time, well, that will be your choice as much as mine." "You are very direct," Catherine said. "Life is too short to dance around important things. Out here especially. The West does not forgive hesitation or dishonesty." Owen met her eyes steadily. "I need to know you understand what I am offering and what I am not. This is a business arrangement first, but I hope it can become a friendship. Anything beyond that is not expected or required." Catherine set down her fork and really looked at the man across from her. Owen Fletcher had kind eyes, she realized, and hands that showed hard work, but moved with surprising gentleness. He was maybe 25 or 26, young for a ranch owner, but he carried himself with a maturity that came from responsibility and loss. "I understand," she said slowly. "And I appreciate your honesty. I will be honest in return. I do not know if I can do what you are asking. I do not know anything about running a ranch, and my cooking skills are genuinely terrible. But I am willing to learn, and I will work harder than anyone has ever worked for you if you give me the chance to prove myself." A smile crossed Owen's face, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his features entirely. "That is all I can ask for. We will take it one day at a time, figure things out as we go." They finished their meal in more comfortable silence, and afterward Owen showed Catherine where everything was kept in the kitchen. He had her help with the dishes, teaching her the routine of cleanup, explaining how important it was to maintain order and cleanliness to keep pests away. "Tomorrow will be a long day," he said as they finished. "I want to show you the full operation, introduce you properly to Miguel and Thomas, let you get a feel for how things run. Then we will start with the books. I have been keeping them myself, but honestly, my handwriting is terrible and I am not the best with numbers." "I can help with that," Catherine said with more confidence. "Mathematics was always my strongest subject." "Good. Because I have a feeling I have been losing money somewhere in my calculations, but I cannot figure out where." Owen showed her to her new room, which was indeed larger than she had expected. The bed was a real frame with a rope mattress and what looked like a decent quilt. A small window looked out over the valley, and a trunk sat at the foot of the bed. A washstand with a basin and pitcher completed the furnishings. "It is not much," Owen said from the doorway, "but it is yours. There is water in the pitcher, and I will bring you fresh every morning until you learn where the well is and can fetch it yourself." "It is more than I had this morning," Catherine said softly. "Thank you, Owen." "You are welcome, Catherine. Sleep well. Tomorrow starts early around here." He closed the door, and Catherine was alone for the first time all day. She sank onto the bed, her body finally relaxing from the tension she had been carrying. The mattress was comfortable, the room clean and neat, and through the window she could see stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. She thought about everything that had happened, how quickly her life had changed direction. This morning she had been a burden, a failure, someone whose only value was whatever price she might bring at auction. Now she was a partner, or at least had the potential to be one. Owen Fletcher was not what she had expected. He was educated despite his rough exterior, thoughtful and surprisingly progressive in his views on women and their capabilities. Catherine changed into the simple nightgown from her bundle and slipped between the sheets. They smelled of soap and sun, clean and fresh. As she drifted toward sleep, she found herself thinking not about the horror of the auction but about the possibilities that lay ahead. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something that might have been hope. The next morning arrived with the sound of roosters crowing and the low of cattle in the distance. Catherine woke, disoriented for a moment, before remembering where she was. Sunlight streamed through her window, and when she looked out, she could see Owen already up and working in one of the corrals, his movements sure and practiced as he worked with a young horse. She dressed quickly in her one other dress, which was only slightly less worn than the one she had worn yesterday, and emerged from her room to find the main room empty but the smell of coffee hanging in the air. A pot sat on the stove, still warm, and beside it was a plate covered with a cloth. When Catherine lifted the corner, she found biscuits and bacon, still hot. She poured herself coffee and was just taking her first bite of bacon when the door opened and Owen came in, dusting off his hands. "You are up," he said with satisfaction. "Good. I was not sure if you were an early riser." "I can be when needed," Catherine said. "Did you make breakfast?" "I did. Told you I could manage basic meals. Though I will warn you, I only know about 5 different dishes, so we will be eating a lot of the same things. That is still 5 more than I can make reliably." Owen laughed, a sound that seemed to fill the room with warmth. "We will work on that, but first, finish eating and then come out. I want to show you around properly." Catherine ate quickly, then joined Owen outside. The morning was crisp and cool, the sun just beginning to warm the valley. Owen walked her through the ranch systematically, explaining each building and its purpose. The barn housed the horses and feed. The smaller outbuildings stored tools, tack, and supplies. The corrals held cattle that needed special attention, either for medical care or training. "We run about 200 head of cattle," Owen explained as they walked. "Not a huge operation, but enough to make a living if we are smart about it. We sell beef to the mining camps in the mountains and some to buyers who drive it further east. The key is keeping the herd healthy and getting good prices." "How do you know you are getting good prices?" Catherine asked. "Research mostly. I correspond with other ranchers, read the newspapers when I can get them, keep track of market fluctuations. But I will be honest, I think I have been underselling. I am good with cattle, not so good with negotiation." "Maybe that is something I can help with," Catherine offered. "I used to help my father with his business dealings before he died. He said I had a knack for seeing when someone was trying to cheat us." Owen stopped walking and turned to look at her with interest. "What kind of business did your father run?" "He was an importer in St. Louis. mostly goods from Europe. He dealt with a lot of merchants and distributors, and he taught me how to read contracts and spot unfavorable terms. That could be incredibly valuable, Owen said slowly. I have a contract with a buyer coming up for renewal next month. Maybe you could look at it, tell me if I am getting a fair deal. I would be happy to. They continued the tour, and Catherine found herself genuinely interested in the workings of the ranch. Owen had a system for everything, from rotating pastures to keep the grass healthy to marking cattle for identification. He spoke about his plans to expand, maybe add sheep or more horses, but only if he could afford the investment. Miguel and Thomas joined them mid-morning, and Owen put Catherine to work helping repair a section of fence that had been damaged by a fallen tree. It was hot, physical labor, and Catherine's hands were soft from 3 years of mostly indoor work. By noon, she had blisters forming on her palms, but she refused to complain. "You are pushing too hard," Owen said, noticing her wince as she gripped the wire. "Take a break. There is no shame in building up to this kind of work." "I want to pull my weight," Catherine protested, "and you will. But not by injuring yourself on the first day. Come on, let's get some food and then I will show you the books. That is work you are already equipped for." They ate a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and dried apples under the shade of a cottonwood tree near the creek. Miguel and Thomas ate with them, and the conversation was easy, ranging from cattle prices to weather predictions to an upcoming dance in Cannon City. "You should take Catherine to the dance," Thomas suggested to Owen with a grin. "Let her meet some of the other folks around here." "Maybe," Owen said noncommittally, but Catherine saw him glance at her as if gauging her reaction. "I have not been to a dance in years," Catherine admitted. "I am not sure I remember how." "It comes back quick," Miguel assured her. "And it would be good for you to meet the other ranchers and their families. You are part of this community now." After lunch, Owen brought Catherine into the house and showed her his office area, which was really just a desk in the corner of the main room with papers stacked in precarious piles. He pulled out a series of ledgers, and Catherine felt her fingers itch to organize the chaos. "This is everything," Owen said with a slightly embarrassed shrug. "Income, expenses, inventory, debts, everything mixed together because I was never good at keeping different books." Catherine spent the rest of the afternoon going through the ledgers, and what she found was both impressive and concerning. Owen was making decent money from his cattle sales, but his expenses were poorly tracked, and he seemed to be losing significant amounts to what Catherine suspected was simple disorganization rather than theft or fraud. "You are paying for feed twice here," she said, pointing to entries from 3 months back. "Same supplier, same amount 1 week apart. Do you remember getting 2 deliveries?" Owen leaned over her shoulder to look, and Catherine was suddenly very aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body, the faint smell of leather and sage that clung to him. "No," he said slowly. "I only remember 1 delivery that month. We were low, but not that low." "Then you were probably charged twice by mistake. Have you paid this invoice?" "Yes, months ago." "Then you are owed a refund. That is $40 sitting with the feed supplier." Catherine made a note on a separate piece of paper. "And here, you have been paying for a newspaper subscription to a publication that I cannot find any record of you actually receiving. The Denver paper. I used to get it, but it stopped coming last winter. You have been paying for it through this month. Another $20. Catherine continued working through the ledgers, finding error after error, discrepancies that added up to significant money. "Owen, you have at least $200 that you are owed by various suppliers and services. Maybe more. Your record keeping has been costing you." Owen sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. I knew it was bad, but I did not realize how bad. No wonder I always feel like I am barely scraping by. You have been paying for your success to line other people's pockets, Catherine said bluntly. But we can fix this. I can write letters, demand refunds where they are owed, set up a proper accounting system so this does not happen again. Then do it, please. Whatever you need, however you want to organize this, just do it. Catherine felt a surge of satisfaction. This was something she could do, something she was good at. I will need proper ledgers, at least 3 different ones, and better ink. Yours is watered down and fading. Make a list. We will go to town in a few days and get everything you need. They worked together through the afternoon, Catherine asking questions about various entries, Owen explaining the context of different purchases and sales. As they worked, Catherine began to see the full picture of the ranch's finances, and she realized that Owen was actually doing quite well, or could be if he tightened up his systems. You have a good operation here, she said as the sun began to set. Better than you probably realize. With proper management and better negotiation on your contracts, you could be making significantly more profit. Enough to hire more hands, maybe expand the herd, potentially, yes. But let me work with the numbers more thoroughly. I want to project your costs and income for the next year and see what is actually feasible. Owen smiled at her, and there was something in his expression that made Catherine's heart skip slightly. I think bringing you home might have been the best business decision I have ever made. It was certainly the best thing that has happened to me in a long time, Catherine admitted. That evening, Owen taught Catherine how to make a simple stew. He was patient, guiding her through each step, showing her how to brown the meat properly, how to judge when vegetables were cooked through, how to season to taste. Catherine burned her first attempt at biscuits to go with it, but Owen just laughed and said his first biscuits had been so hard they could have been used as ammunition. The key is practice, he said, just like anything else. You keep trying, you learn from mistakes, and eventually it becomes second nature. They ate the stew, which Catherine had to admit was actually quite good, and she felt a small glow of pride at having contributed to a meal that did not taste like charcoal. As they cleaned up together, working in tandem at the wash basin, Catherine found herself relaxing in a way she had not in years. "Can I ask you something?" she said as she dried a plate. "Anything? Why did you really come to that auction? The real reason?" Owen was quiet for a moment, his hands stilling in the wash water. "Honestly, I was lonely. I have been running this place by myself, eating alone, sleeping alone, having no one to talk to except Miguel and Thomas, and they have their own lives. I thought maybe if I went to the auction, I might find someone who could share this life with me. Not in the way those other men were thinking, not just a body to use, but a real companion, someone to build something with." He turned to look at her, his eyes serious in the lamplight. "When I saw you up there, I saw someone smart and strong and proud despite circumstances. I thought maybe here is someone who could understand what I am trying to build here. Someone who would not just be content to exist, but who would want to create something meaningful." Catherine felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire in the stove. "I want that too. I spent 3 years feeling useless, like I was just taking up space and wasting air. I want to matter again. I want to build something that lasts." "Then we are on the same page," Owen said softly. The days began to fall into a rhythm. Catherine woke early, helped with breakfast, then spent her mornings working on the ranch operations, learning to handle cattle, repair equipment, and manage the day-to-day tasks that kept everything running. Her hands developed calluses, her muscles grew stronger, and her skin took on a healthy glow from the sun and fresh air. Afternoons were devoted to the business side. Catherine systematically reorganized Owen's finances, creating separate ledgers for income, expenses, and inventory. She wrote letters demanding refunds for overcharges and errors, negotiated better terms with suppliers, and began researching cattle prices across the territory. Evenings were spent in the kitchen, where Owen patiently taught her to cook. Catherine was still not a natural, but she was improving. Her biscuits no longer required a hammer to break open, and she managed to make a beef roast that even Miguel complimented. "You are getting there," Owen said one night as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the stars emerge. "In another few months, you will be out cooking me." "I doubt that, but I appreciate the confidence." 3 weeks after Catherine arrived at the ranch, they made the trip to Cannon City for supplies. Catherine had a long list of items needed for the ranch and the household, and Owen had business with several merchants. As they rode into town, Catherine felt eyes on her, people whispering and pointing. She was the woman who had been auctioned off, and now here she was, riding beside Owen Fletcher like an equal. "Ignore them," Owen said quietly. "Small-minded people with small-minded thoughts. They do not matter." They stopped first at the general store, where Catherine ordered the ledgers and supplies she needed. The storekeeper, a round man named Samuel Morrison, was professional but curious. "Heard you are working for Owen now," he said as he gathered her order. "With Owen," Catherine corrected firmly. "I am his business partner, not his employee." Morrison's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. "Well then, as a business partner, you should know that Owen has been paying too much for his flour. I can get you better prices if you buy in larger quantities." Catherine and Owen exchanged glances. "How much larger?" she asked. "Say 50 pounds at a time instead of 25. I can knock 5 cents a pound off the price." Catherine did quick calculations in her head. They went through flour steadily, and proper storage would not be an issue. "We will take 100 pounds delivered to the ranch, and I want that same bulk rate applied to sugar and salt." Morrison hesitated, then nodded. "Deal. I like doing business with someone who knows numbers." As they left the store, Owen was grinning. "Did you just negotiate Morrison down?" "I have been trying to get better prices from him for 2 years. You have to know what to ask for and how to ask for it," Catherine replied. "My father taught me that merchants respect customers who understand business." Their next stop was the land office, where Owen needed to file some paperwork regarding his property boundaries. While they waited for the clerk to pull the relevant documents, a well-dressed man in his 40s approached them. "Owen Fletcher," the man said with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "I heard you had acquired some new help." "Catherine Johnson, meet Robert Farnsworth," Owen said, his voice notably cooler. "Farnsworth owns the big spread to the west of my property." Farnsworth looked Catherine up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "The auction girl. Yes, I heard about that. Could not cook, could you? Hope Fletcher is getting his money's worth in other ways." Catherine felt Owen tense beside her, but she spoke before he could. "Actually, Mr. Farnsworth, I am Owen's business partner, handling all financial operations for the Fletcher Ranch. And speaking of business, I have been reviewing Owen's contracts and comparing them to market rates. It seems several people have been taking advantage of his good nature. I am in the process of correcting that." "Is that so?" Farnsworth's smile tightened. "Yes, including the water rights agreement you have with Owen. From what I can tell, you have been using significantly more water than your contract allows, which has been affecting Owen's access during the summer months. I am preparing documentation to renegotiate those terms." Farnsworth's face reddened. "Now see here, that contract has been in place for years. And for years it has been violated. Owen was too polite to call you on it. I am not. Catherine smiled sweetly. "You will be hearing from us soon about the new terms." Farnsworth sputtered but seemed at a loss for words. He finally turned on his heel and stalked out of the land office. Owen stared at Catherine with a mixture of shock and admiration. "Did you really find something wrong with the water rights agreement?" "I did. He has been stealing from you, essentially. I have the numbers to prove it." "You are amazing," Owen said, and the sincerity in his voice made Catherine blush. They completed their business in town and loaded their supplies, but before heading back to the ranch, Owen steered them toward the dressmaker's shop. "You need new clothes," he said before Catherine could protest. "You have been wearing the same 2 dresses since you arrived, and they are both nearly worn through. Consider it a business expense. My partner needs to look professional." The dressmaker, a kind woman named Sarah Chen, welcomed them warmly and took Catherine's measurements. She showed them fabrics and patterns, and Catherine found herself drawn to practical styles in sturdy materials, but also to one dress in a deep blue that would be suitable for social occasions. "We will take 2 work dresses and the blue one," Owen said, overriding Catherine's protests about cost. "And whatever undergarments and necessities she needs. Send the bill to the ranch." By the time they headed home, the afternoon was waning and both horses were loaded with supplies. Catherine felt different than she had when they rode this same trail weeks ago. She sat taller in the saddle, felt more confident, more like she belonged in this life. "Thank you," she said to Owen as they rode, "for the clothes but also for defending me earlier, with Farnsworth. You did not need defending. You handled him better than I ever have." Owen looked at her with something that might have been pride. "You are quite formidable when you want to be. Years of watching my father deal with difficult merchants, I learned from the best. He would be proud of you, I think, what you are building here." Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes. "I hope so. I hope both my parents would be proud. They raised me to use my mind, to be independent. My aunt thought that was my biggest failing, but you see it as strength. Because it is strength. Intelligence and independence are not flaws, Catherine. They are gifts. Anyone who tells you otherwise is afraid of what you might accomplish if you believe in yourself." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Catherine found herself studying Owen when she thought he was not looking. He had become so familiar to her in such a short time. She knew the way he pushed his hair back when he was frustrated, the slight squint he got when he was calculating something in his head, the crooked smile that appeared when he was genuinely amused. She knew he liked his coffee strong and black, that he had a habit of humming old trail songs while he worked, that he always made sure the horses were settled before seeing to his own comfort. More than that, she knew he was kind, not just to her, but to everyone. He treated Miguel and Thomas with respect, paid them fairly, and listened to their input. He was gentle with the animals, patient with the young horses he trained. He had taken a chance on a woman he did not know because he saw potential where others saw only failure. Catherine was beginning to realize that what she felt for Owen Fletcher was more than gratitude, more than friendship. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race when he smiled at her, that made her hyper-aware of his presence when they worked side by side. She was falling in love with him. The realization should have terrified her. She had only known him a few weeks, but somehow it felt right, as natural as breathing, as inevitable as the sun rising each morning. Back at the ranch, Miguel and Thomas helped them unload the supplies. Miguel noticed the packages from the dressmaker and winked at Catherine. "New dresses. Owen is treating you well, I see." "Business expense," Owen said firmly, but Catherine saw the tips of his ears redden slightly. "Of course," Miguel agreed, his tone suggesting he did not believe that for a second. That night after dinner, Owen pulled out the contract with his main cattle buyer. Can you look at this? The renewal is due in 2 weeks, and I have been thinking about what you said about underselling. Catherine read through the document carefully, her practiced eye catching clauses that were unfavorable. This is not a good contract, Owen. You are locked into prices that do not adjust for market conditions, and you are responsible for delivery costs that should be split. You are losing money on every sale. Can we renegotiate? We can try. Or we can look for a different buyer. Let me do some research, write some letters. I think we can do much better than this. Over the next week, Catherine threw herself into research. She wrote to other ranchers asking about their buyers, contacted meat processors in Denver and Colorado Springs, and studied newspaper reports on beef prices. What she found was that Owen had been significantly undervaluing his product. "You have prime beef," she explained to him one evening, her ledgers spread across the table. "Grass-fed, healthy stock. You should be getting at least 20% more than what you are being paid, maybe 30% if we can find the right buyer. Can we really get that much more?" "I believe so. I have been corresponding with a processor in Denver. They supply the mining camps and are always looking for quality beef. They are interested in meeting with us." "Us?" Owen looked at her with surprise. "You do not think I am going to let you go negotiate alone, do you? You said yourself you are not good at negotiation. We are partners, Owen. We do this together." A slow smile spread across Owen's face. "Together, I like the sound of that." They planned a trip to Denver for the following week. It would be Catherine's first time away from the ranch since she arrived, and she was both nervous and excited. Owen assured her that Miguel and Thomas could handle things for the few days they would be gone. The night before they were to leave, Catherine tried on her new blue dress. Sarah had delivered all 3 dresses that afternoon, and they fit perfectly. The blue one in particular transformed her. The color brought out the blue in her eyes, and the cut was flattering without being immodest. She was admiring herself in the small mirror in her room when she heard a knock on the door. "Catherine, can I talk to you for a minute?" Owen's voice came through the wood. "Just a moment." Catherine grabbed a shawl to throw over the dress and opened the door. Owen stood there, clearly fresh from washing up after the day's work, his hair still damp. When he saw her in the blue dress, his eyes widened slightly. "You look beautiful," he said, the words seeming to escape without his permission. Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you." "Sarah does excellent work. It is not just the dress." Owen seemed to struggle with something, then took a breath. "Catherine, I need to tell you something before we go to Denver, before we go into a business meeting together and people make assumptions about our relationship." Catherine's heart began to pound. "What is it?" "When I brought you home from that auction, I meant what I said about partnership and not expecting anything from you. I still mean that. You do not owe me anything beyond the work we agreed to." Owen met her eyes steadily. "But I need you to know that over these past weeks, my feelings have changed. Or maybe they were there from the beginning, I do not know. What I do know is that you have become the most important person in my life." "Owen," Catherine breathed, hardly daring to hope. "I am not asking for anything," he continued quickly. "I just needed you to know. Before we go to Denver and spend days together traveling, staying in a hotel, working side by side, I needed to be honest about where I stand so there is no confusion or misunderstanding." Catherine stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out to touch his chest. "And where do you stand?" "I am in love with you," Owen said simply. "Completely, thoroughly in love with you. You are smart and strong and funny and brave, and every day I wake up grateful that I found you. Or that you found me, I am not sure which." "Both," Catherine whispered. "We found each other." She looked up at him, her heart in her throat. "I love you too, Owen." I think I have been falling in love with you since that first day when you looked at me like I was a person worth knowing, not just a commodity to be bought." Owen reached up to cup her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Can I kiss you, please?" He lowered his head and kissed her softly, almost reverently, and Catherine felt like every piece of her life had been leading to this moment. The kiss deepened, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer. Owen's arms came around her waist, holding her securely, and Catherine had never felt safer or more wanted in her life. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you wait?" "I needed to be sure you felt the same way. I needed you to come to it on your own terms, not because you felt obligated or grateful." "I am grateful," Catherine said honestly, "but that is not why I love you. I love you because you see me as an equal. Because you challenged me to be better and believed I could be. Because you are kind and honest and you make me laugh. Because you make me feel like I have finally found where I belong." Owen kissed her again, longer this time, and when they separated, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I probably should not stay in your room much longer," he said reluctantly. "Not because I do not trust you, but because I am not sure I trust myself." Catherine smiled. "We have time. We have all the time in the world now." "Yes, we do, but Catherine, I want you to know I plan to marry you. When you are ready, when the time is right. I want to do this properly, courting and a real proposal and everything you deserve." "I look forward to it," Catherine said softly. They stood there for another moment, just looking at each other before Owen finally forced himself to step back. "I should let you sleep. We have an early start tomorrow. Good night, Owen." "Good night, Catherine. I love you." "I love you too." Catherine closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing with joy. She had gone from being auctioned off like cattle to being loved by a man she respected and admired. Life had a strange way of working out sometimes. The trip to Denver took 2 days by horseback, riding through the foothills of the Rockies. Owen and Catherine camped the first night under the stars, and Catherine had never seen anything more beautiful than the blanket of stars overhead. So thick and bright, they seemed close enough to touch. They lay side by side near the fire, not touching but close enough that Catherine could feel Owen's warmth. "Tell me about your brother," she said. "The one who went to California, Nathaniel. He is 2 years younger than me, always was more of a dreamer than I am. When our parents died, he helped me get the ranch established, but his heart was not in it. He wanted to see the ocean, try his luck at something other than ranching, so I told him to go. Do you miss him?" "Every day, but I want him to be happy, and he was not happy here. We write when we can, though mail is slow. Last I heard, he was working on a fishing boat in San Francisco and loving it." "You are a good brother." "I try. What about you? Any siblings?" "No, just me. My parents always wanted more children, but it never happened. I think that is why they invested so much in my education. They wanted me to have every opportunity, even though I was a girl. They sound like good people. They were the best. I miss them terribly." Owen reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I am sorry you lost them. But I am grateful that their legacy is you, smart and strong, and everything they raised you to be." They reached Denver the next day, and Catherine was amazed by the size and bustle of the city. It was so much bigger than Cannon City, with more people and buildings than she had seen in years. Owen had reserved rooms at a respectable hotel, separate rooms naturally, and they cleaned up from the journey before heading to their meeting with the meat processor. The processor was a man named Edward Tanner, and he ran his operation out of a large facility on the edge of the city. He was impressed by Catherine's detailed records of the Fletcher Ranch's cattle, including health records, breeding information, and quality assessments. "This is more thorough documentation than I have seen from ranchers 3 times your size," Tanner said, studying the ledgers Catherine had brought. "You can verify the health and quality of every animal." "We can," Catherine confirmed. "Owen maintains excellent records and care standards. You will not find better beef in the territory." They negotiated for over 2 hours, and Catherine drove a hard bargain. She knew what the beef was worth, knew what other ranchers were getting, and refused to settle for less than fair value. Finally, Tanner agreed to terms that were significantly better than Owen's previous contract. "You drive a hard bargain, Miss Johnson," Tanner said as they finalized the agreement. "Mrs. Fletcher, actually," Owen interjected smoothly, and Catherine turned to stare at him in shock. He looked back at her with an expression of complete innocence. "Is that so?" Tanner looked between them with interest. "Congratulations. You are a lucky man, Fletcher." "Do not I know it," Owen agreed. After they left Tanner's office, contract in hand, Catherine pulled Owen aside in the street. "Mrs. Fletcher," she demanded, though she was fighting a smile. "I may have jumped the gun a bit," Owen admitted, "but I figured it would make things simpler for business purposes. People take married couples more seriously as business partners." "Is that the only reason?" "No." Owen took her hand right there in the street, not caring who saw. "The main reason is I want it to be true. Catherine Johnson, will you marry me? I know it is sudden and we have not known each other long, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and I want to build a life with you, a real partnership in every sense." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Owen swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her right there on the street, and Catherine did not care who was watching. "We should find a preacher," Owen said. "Make it official before I accidentally lie to any more business associates." They found a small church and a minister who was willing to perform the ceremony that afternoon. It was simple and quick, with the minister's wife and his assistant serving as witnesses, but it was perfect. Catherine wore her blue dress, and Owen stood beside her in his best clothes, and when they said their vows, Catherine knew she was making the right choice. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Owen said, his hands holding hers. "To respect your mind and value your contributions. To love you not for what you can do for me, but for who you are. To build a life with you that honors both of us." "I promise to stand beside you," Catherine replied, "to work with you and challenge you, to bring my full self to this partnership. To love you with my whole heart and build something lasting together." The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and when Owen kissed her, Catherine felt like her life had finally, truly begun. They spent their wedding night in the hotel, and Catherine discovered that Owen was as patient and considerate in intimacy as he was in everything else. He made sure she felt safe and cherished, and when she woke the next morning in his arms, she could not remember ever feeling happier. "Good morning, Mrs. Fletcher," Owen murmured against her hair. "Good morning, husband. I like the sound of that. So do I." They spent another day in Denver, handling additional business and shopping for supplies. Owen insisted on buying Catherine a proper wedding ring, a simple gold band that fit perfectly. He also surprised her with a new saddle, beautifully tooled leather with her initials worked into the design. "Every rancher needs a good saddle," he said when she protested the expense. "And you are a rancher now, partner." The journey back to the ranch felt different. They were not employer and employee, not even just partners now. They were husband and wife building a life together. They camped again the first night, and Catherine fell asleep in Owen's arms under the stars, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. When they arrived home, Miguel and Thomas were waiting with grins on their faces. "We heard congratulations are in order," Miguel said, his eyes twinkling. "How did you hear already?" Catherine asked in surprise. "Ryder came through from Denver yesterday, mentioned seeing Owen Fletcher marry some woman in a blue dress. We figured it had to be you." Thomas stepped forward to shake Owen's hand. "About time you made an honest woman of her." "I would argue she made an honest man of me," Owen replied, pulling Catherine close. "She is too good for me, but I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her." Over the following months, Catherine and Owen settled into married life. They moved into Owen's room together, and Catherine turned her old room into a proper office for the ranch business. The new contract with Edward Tanner proved even more lucrative than expected, and with the money they saved from Catherine's reorganization and the increased income, they were able to hire 2 more hands and expand the herd. Catherine proved to be a natural at ranch management. Her organizational skills and business acumen complemented Owen's practical knowledge and skill with cattle. Together, they made the Fletcher Ranch more profitable than it had ever been. But more than the business success, they built a partnership rooted in love and mutual respect. Owen never made a major decision without consulting Catherine, and she valued his input on every aspect of their operation. They worked together, laughed together, and at the end of each day fell into bed together, grateful for what they had found. Catherine's cooking improved dramatically, though she never became a natural chef. Owen did not care. As he often said, he had not married her for her cooking. He had married her for her brilliant mind, her sharp wit, and the way she challenged him to be better every single day. The following spring brought news that rocked their world. Catherine discovered she was pregnant. Owen was overjoyed, though also terrified, and Catherine found his nervousness endearing. "What if I am a terrible father?" he worried one night as they lay in bed. "You will be a wonderful father," Catherine assured him. "You are kind and patient and loving. Our child will be lucky to have you." "Our child," Owen repeated, his hand resting gently on Catherine's stomach. "I still cannot believe it. Believe it. In a few months there will be 3 of us." The pregnancy was not easy, but Owen was attentive and supportive throughout. He took on extra work so Catherine could rest when she needed to, brought her anything she craved, and generally fussed over her in a way that was both annoying and sweet. On a cold November morning in 1879, Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him William, after Catherine's father, and he was perfect. Owen held his son with tears streaming down his face, and Catherine knew she had never seen anything more beautiful than her husband cradling their child. "Thank you," Owen whispered to Catherine. "Thank you for this, for him, for everything." "We made him together," Catherine replied. "Just like we have made everything together." William was a good baby, healthy and strong, and he thrived under the doting attention of not just his parents but Miguel and Thomas as well. As he grew, it became clear he had his mother's intelligence and his father's easy nature, a combination that promised much for his future. 2 years after William was born, Catherine delivered twin girls. They named them Julia and Emma, and suddenly the ranch house that had once seemed spacious felt wonderfully crowded. Owen expanded the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen, joking that at the rate they were going, they would need to build a 2nd story. Catherine balanced motherhood with running the ranch business, and somehow she managed both. She kept the books while nursing a baby, negotiated contracts with a toddler on her hip, and taught William his letters while reviewing cattle inventories. It was exhausting and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Owen was an involved father, never leaving all the childcare to Catherine. He changed diapers, soothed crying babies in the night, and as the children grew, he taught them to ride and rope and read the land. He wanted his daughters to have the same opportunities as his son, and Catherine loved him even more for that. The Fletcher ranch continued to prosper. Word of mouth brought them more business, and their reputation for quality beef and honest dealings spread throughout the territory. Other ranchers started asking Catherine for advice on managing their operations, and she began consulting part-time, bringing in additional income and establishing herself as a respected business mind in the ranching community. Robert Farnsworth, the neighbor who had been so condescending at their first meeting, eventually approached them about merging operations. Catherine negotiated terms that heavily favored the Fletchers, and Farnsworth had no choice but to accept. His ranch had been failing due to his poor management, and Catherine's expertise had become his only hope for saving it. "You have come a long way from being auctioned off for your poor cooking," Farnsworth said grudgingly as he signed the merger papers. "No," Catherine corrected firmly. "I have always been exactly who I am. The difference is that now I am with someone who values that." She looked at Owen across the room, where he was showing William how to properly hold a rope, and felt a wave of love so strong it almost hurt. Owen caught her looking and smiled, that same smile that had made her heart skip on their first evening together at the ranch. As the years passed, Catherine and Owen built something truly remarkable. Their ranch became one of the most successful in the region, but more importantly, they built a family rooted in love, respect, and partnership. They taught their children that worth was not measured in gender or domestic skills but in character and effort. They showed them that a true partnership meant lifting each other up, valuing each other's strengths, and working together toward common goals. William grew into a thoughtful young man who wanted to take over the ranch someday. Julia developed a passion for horses and became an accomplished trainer. Emma inherited her mother's head for numbers and talked about becoming a banker or accountant. On their 10th anniversary, Owen took Catherine back to Cannon City, to the very square where the auction had been held. The town had grown and changed, and few people even remembered that day. "I was standing right here," Catherine said, looking at the spot where the auction block had been. It was just empty space now, used for farmers' markets and town gatherings. "And I was back there, watching you and thinking you were the most magnificent thing I had ever seen." Owen wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Best $100 I ever spent." "I was not worth $100. You are right. You were worth 10 times that, 100 times. Priceless, really." Catherine leaned back against him. "Do you ever regret it?" "Taking a chance on someone you did not know? Never. Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Catherine Fletcher. You saved me that day." "No," Owen said firmly, turning her to face him. "We saved each other. I was drowning in loneliness and work, going through the motions of life without really living. You brought joy and purpose and partnership. You made everything better." "We made everything better," Catherine corrected. "Together." "Together," Owen agreed and kissed her right there in the town square, not caring who saw. That night back at their ranch, they put the children to bed and sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge. It was the same view they had shared on their first camping trip to Denver, the same stars that had witnessed their first declarations of love. "What do you think about expanding into sheep?" Catherine asked, her mind never quite leaving business even in quiet moments. Owen laughed. "Most women would be thinking about something other than livestock on their anniversary." "I am not most women." "No, you are not. You are extraordinary, and I love that your idea of romantic conversation includes discussing sheep. I think there is good money in wool. The market is growing and we have grazing land we are not fully utilizing. Then we will look into it. We will research, run the numbers, make a decision together." "Together," Catherine echoed contentedly. As the years continued to roll by, the Fletcher family became a cornerstone of their community. Catherine served on the school board, pushing for better education for all children regardless of gender. Owen became known as a fair and honest businessman, someone whose word was as good as a contract. Their children grew healthy and happy, confident in their parents' love and their own worth. Catherine never forgot the day she stood on that auction block, terrified and humiliated, her worth reduced to her lack of domestic skills. But she also remembered Owen stepping forward, seeing value where others saw only failure, offering partnership instead of servitude. That moment had changed both their lives, had set them on a path toward something neither could have imagined. On Catherine's 40th birthday, Owen gave her a bound book. When she opened it, she found it was a journal he had been keeping, chronicling their life together from that first day at the auction through all the years since. "So we never forget how we started," Owen explained. "So our children and grandchildren will know that the best things in life often come from the most unexpected places." Catherine read through the entries, laughing and crying at the memories Owen had preserved. The struggles of those early days, the first time she successfully made edible biscuits, the day they closed their first big contract, the births of their children, all the small moments that had built into a lifetime of love. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me," she said, closing the book carefully. "You gave me a life worth recording," Owen replied. "Everything good I have because you said yes that day in Denver, because you took a chance on a cowboy who needed a partner. I needed a partner too. I just did not know it until I found you." Their oldest, William, married a smart young woman named Grace, and they gave Catherine and Owen their first grandchild, a boy they named Owen after his grandfather. Julia married a horse trainer from Wyoming, and they started their own ranch, specializing in breeding quality stock. Emma went to school in Denver to study business and accounting, blazing a trail for other young women who wanted careers beyond wife and mother. Through it all, Catherine and Owen remained each other's anchor and inspiration. They still worked the ranch together, though they had more help now. They still kept separate ledgers because that system worked for them. They still solved problems together, made decisions together, built their empire together. When Catherine was 50, she was invited to speak at a women's conference in Denver about business and opportunities for women in the West. She almost declined, feeling like she had nothing special to offer, but Owen encouraged her to go. "You have so much to teach," he insisted. "You built a successful business from nothing, raised 3 incredible children, changed the way people in this region think about women's capabilities. Tell your story." So Catherine went to Denver and told her story. She talked about being auctioned off, about Owen seeing her value, about building a partnership based on respect and love. She talked about the challenges she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome, and the opportunities she had seized. The response was overwhelming. Women came up to her afterward, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, thanking her for showing them what was possible. Several young women asked if they could come work for her, learn from her, and Catherine ended up creating an informal mentorship program, bringing women to the ranch to learn business management and ranching operations. "You are changing lives," Owen said proudly when she returned home and told him about the response. "We are changing lives," Catherine corrected. "None of this would be possible without you, without your willingness to see beyond convention, to value partnership over tradition. I just recognized quality when I saw it." As they moved into their 60s, Catherine and Owen began to step back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, letting William and Grace take over primary management. But they still stayed involved, still offered guidance and wisdom earned through decades of experience. They built a smaller house on the property, a comfortable place just for the two of them, and spent their time traveling, visiting their children and grandchildren, and simply enjoying each other's company. They took a trip to San Francisco to visit Owen's brother Nathaniel, who had married and started a successful fishing business. They went back to St. Louis so Catherine could visit her parents' graves and show Owen where she grew up. "I wish they could have met you," Catherine said as they stood at her parents' graveside. "They would have loved you. I wish I could have met them too, to thank them for raising such an incredible daughter." On their 40th anniversary, their children threw them a huge celebration. The entire community came out, people from Cannon City and the surrounding ranches, business associates from Denver, even Edward Tanner, who had become a close friend over the years. There were speeches and toasts, stories and laughter, and through it all, Catherine and Owen sat side by side, hands clasped, watching the life they had built unfold before them. 40 years, Catherine mused. Where did the time go? Into building this, Owen gestured at the celebration, at their children and grandchildren, at the ranch that had been their joint creation. Into every moment we spent together. I would not change a single day. Not even the day I burned that first attempt at biscuits so badly we had to air out the house for a week, Owen laughed. Not even that day, because you kept trying, kept learning, and now you make the best biscuits in the county. That is a considerable exaggeration. Maybe. But you are the best partner anyone could ask for, and that is no exaggeration. As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, Catherine reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been auctioned off like cattle, valued at barely enough to buy a horse, dismissed as worthless because she could not perform basic domestic tasks. But Owen had seen beyond that, had offered her something precious, a chance to prove her real worth, to build a partnership based on mutual respect and complementary strengths. Together, they had created not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love and partnership that would extend far beyond their lifetimes. Their children had learned that relationships should be based on equality and respect, that women were capable of anything men could do, that the best things in life were built through collaboration rather than domination. The Fletcher Ranch had become more than just a business. It was a testament to what was possible when two people truly worked together, valuing each other's contributions and building something greater than either could have achieved alone. Years later, when Catherine was 75, she became ill. The doctor said it was her heart, weakened by time and hard work. Owen refused to leave her side, sleeping in a chair next to their bed, holding her hand through the worst of it. The children came with their families, surrounding Catherine with love and support. "I am not ready to go," Catherine whispered to Owen one night when the pain was particularly bad. "Then do not go, fight, stay with me. I have had such a good life, better than I ever dreamed possible. We are not done yet. We still have more life to live, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch together." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Promise me something, anything. Promise me you will tell our story. Tell people how we started, what we built. Make sure people know that the best partnerships are based on respect, not tradition. That seeing someone's true value is the most important skill anyone can have. I promise. But you are going to be here to tell it with me, so save your strength." Against the odds, Catherine did recover, though she was never quite as strong as she had been. She spent her remaining years in the small house she and Owen had built, surrounded by family, content in the knowledge that she had lived a full and meaningful life. Owen was 80 when Catherine finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, her hand in his. The funeral drew hundreds of people, all whose lives she had touched in some way. Her children spoke about her intelligence and drive, her business acumen, and her fierce love for her family. Her grandchildren talked about her warmth and wisdom, the way she made each of them feel special and valued. But it was Owen who gave the most moving tribute. He stood before the assembled crowd, his voice strong despite his grief, and told the story of how they met. He described seeing Catherine on that auction block, recognizing in her something precious that everyone else had overlooked. He talked about their partnership, how they had built something extraordinary together by respecting each other's strengths and working as equals. Catherine was auctioned because she could not cook, Owen said, his voice carrying across the church. But I did not need a servant. I needed a partner. And in Catherine Johnson, I found not just a partner but my soulmate, my best friend, and the love of my life. She taught me that true value lies not in meeting conventional expectations, but in bringing your authentic self to everything you do. She showed me that the best relationships are built on mutual respect and shared purpose. She gave me 48 years of the happiest partnership any man could hope for. He paused, looking at Catherine's casket with eyes full of love and loss. She asked me to tell our story, to make sure people understood what we built and why. So I am telling you now. See the value in others, especially when they cannot see it themselves. Offer partnership instead of hierarchy. Build relationships based on respect rather than tradition. That is how you create something that lasts, something that matters. That is the legacy Catherine and I built together, and it will continue through our children and grandchildren, and all the people whose lives she touched. Owen lived another 5 years after Catherine's death, spending his time with family and friends, ensuring the ranch continued to thrive under William's management. He never remarried, telling anyone who asked that he had already had the great love of his life, and nothing could replace that. When Owen finally passed away at the age of 85, he was buried beside Catherine in the small cemetery on the ranch property. Their grave marker was simple, bearing both their names and a single inscription that Owen had chosen himself: partners in all things. The Fletcher Ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own contributions while maintaining the core values that Catherine and Owen had established: hard work, mutual respect, and the understanding that true partnership meant valuing each person's unique contributions. The story of how Catherine and Owen met became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren. A reminder that the best things in life often come from unexpected places, and that seeing someone's true value is the greatest gift one person can give another. In the town of Cannon City, a historical marker was eventually placed in the square where the auction had been held, commemorating not just the Fletcher Ranch but the story of Catherine and Owen, two people who had built something extraordinary from the most unlikely beginning. The marker read, "On this site in August 1878, Catherine Johnson was auctioned due to her inability to cook. Owen Fletcher recognized her true worth and offered partnership instead of servitude." Together, they built the Fletcher Ranch and a relationship based on mutual respect and love that became a model for successful partnerships. Their story reminds us that seeing beyond convention to recognize true value in others is the foundation of lasting success and happiness. The Fletcher Ranch still stands today, a thriving operation run by Catherine and Owen's descendants, a testament to what two people can build when they work together as true partners. And somewhere, perhaps in the wind that whispers through the valley or in the stars that shine over the Colorado landscape, the spirits of Catherine and Owen Fletcher watch over the legacy they created, still partners, still together, still proving that love and respect can build something that truly lasts forever.